Good afternoon, beautiful people of the NFL podcast listening world. Welcome back to your favorite NFL podcast. And yes, we are whole again. We are we are our usual troublesome trio here on your favorite NFL pod over the last year, plus the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. And guys, the title does not deceive you. It is finally time. The long-awaited, the much anticipated part of the show where we are really building up to the season is here once again. It is the 2023 SAOC NFL Division Breakdowns, and we are starting that this week. And of course, as always, except for when people take vacation suddenly, we have our usual triumvirate trio here. And I'm just excited about it. Myself, the Iceman, Jurg, introing things as always, joined with me by my two friends. First, he's kind of locked in some sort of darkness down there. He's taken my role of, I get all the light and he gets all the dark, I guess, in this episode. Justin, how we doing?
I'm channeling my inner Rogers. I'm in a nice little darkness retreat. Ooh. And I wanted to get at Rick, so I figured.
You're not doing it right, though. You need the full-on beard and everything else.
It takes time to grow, man.
Well, you also don't have Wi-Fi in the darkness retreat, so there's that.
We make exceptions for.
You've made me a very unhappy ball.
Rick, exceptions get made for the content, and as you should know, it's all for the content. And as he was speaking there, showing one of the emoji balls there, freshly minted with new headphones. I like it. Rick.
Thank you.
The podfather himself.
Thank you. Yes, I decided to go back to my college radio days where we actually used actual headphones with 3/4 inch headphone jacks. All good fun. So yeah, decided to do that a little bit. Nice and cushioned for the ears, and no pressure in the ear canals and the eardrums. So yay, all good. All good. Thanks.
So all we need now, Rick, I've always worn the over-the-ear headphones. You're wearing them now going forward. Justin's the last of the Crusaders here who's trying to deny it. When do we get them?
If you remember when we started, I always wear headphones.
True.
And then I remembered, I hate headphones.
Oh, well, there's that.
Kinds. So
is it because you have the most hair between the three of us, and
I don't think
the three of us it affects your hair?
I think it's just I have a big head, and none of them ever fit.
What size baseball cap do you wear, Justin? If it's a fitted one,
I don't know.
I'm a 7 3/4. I've got a wider head than you, so it might be
maybe.
Yeah, you might be a 7.5 to 7 5/8, something like that. So,
I'll have to come over and get fitted.
Yeah, well, got some good ones.
So while future plans get made by those two, ladies and gentlemen, the plans for the present are very much here. As I introed the show with, it is the highly anticipated divisional breakdowns, just like we did last year. We're bringing them back, and this time we are starting in the NFC with things. We're staying in the South because, come on now, let's be honest. The South is probably the division to really get things going here. But we are starting with the NFC South this year in a division that we've kind of been hinting at as we've talked about the free agency period, the draft. The NFC South is a interesting division, to say the very least, in both good and many bad ways. We'll get the full breakdown, as was last year and as will be the case this season. The way it's going to work, ladies and gentlemen, is that we are going to break down each individual team. We're going to talk about additions, subtractions, break them down in any way we can between the three of us. And then at the very end, once we've talked about all four of these teams, we are going to give our personal predictions for how we think the divisions stack up, who's going to go, who we think will go fourth, and who we think will go first. The order of which we discuss the teams will be based off of how they finished last season, just for context for the people, so they don't assume that if we talk about Tampa first, there's some sort of consensus between us that Tampa's going to somehow finish first again or last. Maybe the last part, but not the first part, to say the very least, just for the people to understand that. So that being said, that is for later in the show, because as everyone knows, at least if you watched the show before, if you haven't, welcome. The motto of the show, ladies and gentlemen, is fun, football, and chaos. And we always start with the fun. Our games master, Justin, is here. He's back from vacation. Justin, let's run with the games. What do we got first?
All right. So, Jurg, I was actually thinking about taking a play out of your playbook. You asked us the only 8 teams without a 10,000-yard receiver. I want to know the only 7 teams that have a rusher that has not eclipsed 7,000 career rushing yards for that team.
Ooh, okay. 7,000 rushing yards for that team.
Minimum.
Interesting. So, the question really is, there's a lot of guys who are, I would say, that had great careers but fitted for two different teams.
Mm-hmm.
So my initial thought with this is Curtis Martin, because Curtis Martin played with both New England and the Jets, but I think that he did a lot more for the Jets than he did for New England. Now, does that mean that there's not been a Patriot that's rushed for over 7,000 yards in a career as a Patriot? And if you look at the history of New England running backs over the last maybe 2 decades or so, they always seem to get like one-offs or cast-offs from other teams. And I think a real reason why this could be in the news as of now is Corey Dillon and all of what's going on with him. So I think New England's a good shout, so I'll make the first stab and I'll say the Patriots.
The Patriots' leading rusher is one Sam Cunningham with 5,453 yards. He is the highest Patriot, but the Patriots have the lowest rushing total for a single career to be their leading rusher.
Yeah, because that team has never been a run-heavy team. It's always been more pass-driven. Even if you go through the 90s to now, it's been Bledsoe and Brady, and then that 1 year with Matt Castle, and now the disaster that is McCorkle Jones. So.
Yes. And that's especially a good shout, Rick, because you mentioned, like, you bring up Curtis Martin as like a big example of it. But even when the Patriots get a running back of some repute, it's either they get him at the start and sell him off, or, and this usually happens, they trade him for him from another team where it's only a certain amount of years left that the guy has. And Corey Dillon being one of those examples, he was a Cincinnati Bengal before he became a New England Patriot. So them's the breaks. So that's just a banger of a first guess right there, Rick. So I'm not locking this one in, Rick, because I want to throw this one to you.
Sure.
Because there is one player with this team that I'm 50-50 on if he did achieve over 7K, but I think the injuries towards the end of his career really cost him the yardage total, is what I'm wondering. With the Houston Texans, Arian Foster, we know was dynamic at his peak, but I don't think he had enough volume. I remember a good 3-4 year stretch. He was a top 5 running back in the NFL easily. But I think after it was a certain season, maybe it was 2013 or 2014, where it just completely fell off a cliff and he just was never able to get like fully healthy for a season ever again. So what do you think?
Arian Foster, you mean Ray Jennings from Draft Day, right?
Yes.
No, I think that's a good guess too, because you're right. Foster was a dynamic running back for the time that he was able to stay on the field, but I don't think 7,000 is a spot for him. I think he's close to like 6,500. I think he's just short of it. I think that's the problem, is that the injuries cut short what could have been a really good career. So that's not a bad guess.
Yeah, and literally both before him and then after him, there hasn't been a Houston Texans running back that I think has a notable career. Unless there's someone I'm forgetting, I don't think there's been someone at that level since. I think it'd be interesting to see the gap between Arian Foster and whoever is second on that decision. But that'll be my first stab for it, Justin. I'm going to say the Houston Texans.
Arian Foster is the leading rusher for the Houston Texans. But according to the script that was written out for him, Rick is correct. Just under 6,500. He's got 6,472 career rushing yards.
Wait, the script written down for Foster or the script written down for me?
Both of you.
Just under 6,500.
Oh, yeah, no.
So you must have had some hand in his script writing, because you got that number right on.
Yeah, no, you know what? Actually, they did consult me for draft day. You're right. I made sure that Terry Crews was hired to be his father for that role. Yeah. People don't know something. I'm a very big Hollywood producer, like Steve Tisch, way back in the day.
Yeah, Rick just chooses to be with us here in the slums.
Come on.
This is charity for him.
You guys are where it's at. Come on now. Let's be real here. All right. That's 2. So let's move on to somebody else. What do you think, Jerg, about, because you know what? There hasn't really been a guy that I could think of for this team that I would really think would be. They've drafted guys, but they haven't really been huge. What about Tampa? Doug Martin was a big guy for them.
He was also he always alternated. It's like he would have a really good season. Like he'd have like 1,200 yards, and then he'd have like 400.
Yeah. I forgot. Did they draft Cadillac as well? They drafted Cadillac Williams, I think, right?
I think so, but I don't think.
But again, he could have been a really good player, but I think he's another guy. Injuries kind of befell him,
right?
And then obviously, if you go back into the lore of Tampa Bay, when they were terrible. They
Yeah.
probably didn't get anything going on there. So.
And also the lore of Tampa Bay in their early years, once a player got too good and he needed a pay raise, Culverhouse would just let them go or just trade them.
So the only name that I'm thinking of that might throw this list off, but I don't know because he was a force when he was there, but I don't know how long. Warwick Dunn.
I don't think he got $7K with Tampa.
I don't think he was there for that long.
No,
or if he was hurt.
I don't think he got $7K with just Tampa. I'd be pleasantly surprised. I'm not trying to disrespect the man's career, but I don't think he was there long enough to get $7K with just Tampa.
Tampa sounds like the team that would have a fullback leading this list, like Mike Allstott.
Probably.
So I'll run with Tampa as my second guess.
Tampa Bay's leading rusher all time, James Wilder.
That's right.
They're one of two teams to not have a rusher eclipse 6,000 yards. Wilder finished with 5,957 career yards for the Buccaneers.
And James Wilder is the guy who, before Deontay Johnson did it last year, had the most catches without a touchdown in a single season. Yes, that was another trivia question from way back when. So the name just struck me there. Okay, so we're 3 for 3 now.
There we are. We are. Okay.
All right.
No, they had those two guys. I don't think. This is tough.
What are you thinking?
See, I'm hesitant because there's two notable running backs that played for this team, but they played at the same time. So that's what's making me be like, did either of them get enough yardage individually? The Carolina Panthers. At one point, they had D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart together, two very good running backs as a duo. The two of them were never on at the same time.
You know who else you're forgetting, though? Steven Davis.
You think he got 7K?
I think one of those three did. I know Davis was with Washington for a bit, but I know one of those three definitely has. It's not a bad look, but what was your other thought?
No, that was like the first one that popped into mind.
Which team did you say?
Carolina.
We're not locking in yet, but that's like the first one that came to my mind because like three good running backs there, and they maybe here's the thing, they probably did achieve 7K in their career, but did they do that? Did they get at least 7K with just Carolina alone? Well,
I don't recall either Stewart or Williams being on any other team for a significant amount of time.
D'Angelo Williams had a spell with the Steelers for the end of his career.
He was in Pittsburgh. I don't remember if Jonathan Stewart was anywhere else.
I don't remember that either.
But he shared so many backfields. That's what's making me think. Like it was literally him and Williams like taking turns. And so like that's what makes me think because Jonathan Stewart may have been there for like 8 or 9 seasons in Carolina, maybe even 10. But like, did he get 700, 800, 900 yards every single year? I don't know about that. He shared a backfield with a really good running back.
He did.
So
I do kind of like the narrative though that we've set up for ourselves, and that this question ties into our NFC South division breakdown.
Right?
Yeah.
This is Justin's plan all along.
Because I'm also thinking of not Carolina per se, but I'm thinking New Orleans.
You know what?
Juice McAllister or Mark Ingram.
And I don't think they got 7K with just New Orleans because Mark Ingram went to Baltimore for a good spell, and he had some really good seasons there.
Yeah.
Reggie Bush obviously didn't get that kind of yardage, just rushing wise with the Saints, and then Alvin Kamara. I mean, maybe Kamara would have 7K at this point if he wasn't such an idiot.
Did Mark Ingram retire?
Not officially.
Okay, he's still going to be on the Saints this year.
He's out there.
He's somewhere.
Well, he was traded for the Saints last year, if you remember, from the Texans.
Yeah, I don't think he officially retired yet. No, but I don't think he's on the Saints. He might be a free agent, but I don't think he's on the Saints officially.
He's always a phone call away for training camp in preseason.
Do you want to roll with Carolina, and we'll see?
I kind of want to roll with your New Orleans guess first.
Roll with New Orleans, then. Go for it. Let's do it.
Yeah,
New Orleans. Yeah,
roll with New Orleans.
New Orleans' leading rusher is one Mark Ingram, but he did not eclipse 7,000 yards. You guys are correct. He might have done that as his career. In fact,
he definitely did.
Have here he has 8,111 career rushing yards, but with the Saints, he's only got 6,267.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. So let's put Carolina to the side. We can come back to them later. What about Atlanta?
Them, I don't know because what's his name?
Jamal Anderson?
I wasn't even going to say him. I was going to say Turner. They had him for a really long time.
But that was after his Chargers stint, wasn't it? Or his Colts stint?
I could have, unless I'm misremembering it, I could have sworn he had a couple 1,000-yard seasons.
But I'm almost
You need more than a
there was
couple.
somebody else. Yeah, I think it might have been put somebody else though. All right, so let's put Atlanta to the side then. I'll come back to them in a second.
The NFC South is just helping us here.
Yeah. You know who just popped into my head? A team that had a running back by committee last year that actually did really good. Philadelphia. Because Ricky Waters was there at the start of his career, but he ended in Seattle. I think he was very prolific in Seattle as well.
Right.
And I can't really Brian Westbrook maybe or Deuce Staley, but those are not 7,000-yard guys.
They're not, and they're also not like. Eventually, with Brian Westbrook's career, as good as he was as a running back, like they were slowly becoming more of a pass-heavy team as it went on, because like they would just go in drafts, and they drafted Deshaun Jackson, they drafted Jeremy Maclin. They were they had Terrell Owens. They were becoming a high-flying team.
They were
in Philly slowly but surely.
Ironically, fly Eagles fly.
There we go. So that's not a bad guess.
I'll run with it.
Philadelphia's leading rusher all time is one LaShawn McCoy.
Shady.
Yeah. And his total with the Eagles is 6,792 yards. They are the closest team to 7,000 without getting there.
By the skin of our teeth, Rick.
Wow, shady. Okay, so that's 4, right?
Never forget when Chip Kelly traded LaShawn McCoy.
That's 5, I believe you got.
Who was that? Was it Tampa?
You got Texans, Saints,
Houston.
Bucs, Patriots, and the Eagles.
Oh yeah, 5 now. Okay,
there we are.
Yes, no missteps as of yet, but you still have 2 teams you have to name.
Indeed, we do. No, they had a good running back. Wait, did they have a good running back?
Who's this?
Rick, unless I'm forgetting someone.
Okay.
The Dolphins?
Ronnie Brown was probably their best shot. He got hurt a lot. And they might have had, I think they had Ricky Williams for a few years, but no, they're another pass-heavy offense, especially in the 80s and 90s with Marino.
Yeah, I can't, you just mentioned, I think the Dolphins have had, a good running back here and there, but never a guy that was there for long enough to have, a sustained period of, 1,000,
That wasn't their style.
It still isn't their style.
Well, Tua could. You never know. But
never know. What do you feel about that? You like that Dolphins pick?
I do. I think it's because I'm trying to think about it. Yeah, I think that's a good shout. I'd run with it.
Yeah, Miami Dolphins, Justin.
All right. Well, you guys are forgetting Larry Csonka.
I mean,
did he get 7K?
It's a fullback though, mostly.
He is their leading rusher all time. And he is about 50 or so yards below LaShawn McCoy. He's got 6,737 total career rushing.
Let's go.
Oh yeah. All right, so now we're down to one. Now we're down to one last team.
Yes, we are. We also have a perfect even split so far. It's 3 AFC, 3 NFC.
We do. All right, so let's try and break this down by the other teams.
Right.
So AFC East, I think, is out because the Jets have a great history of running backs. Emerson Boozer, Nate Snell, Martin. The Bills are out because of Thurman Thomas. I think Thurman Thomas clears that list by a mile.
Right.
The AFC North, Cleveland had Jim Brown.
Right.
Baltimore, Jamal Lewis, I think, got over there.
That sounds about right.
Cincinnati's had a history of great running backs. Although I can't think of any that in my head. Rudy Johnson, maybe, but I doubt it. Pittsburgh, another team with a lot of great history of running backs there. So
that is the definition of running backs.
Yeah. Okay. AFC South, Indy, Edgerrin James.
Yep. Very named Houston.
Yep. Jacksonville, Fred Taylor, because he was there his whole career.
Yep.
And then Tennessee, pick your poison: Eddie George, Chris Johnson, or Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Pick your poison there. Okay.
3 really good running backs in Tennessee.
Right.
Just poor them that they had to play for, the
Right.
trash-ass franchise.
AFC West, Denver's out, Terrell Davis. We know that for a while. The Raiders, I think, are out because of Marcus Allen.
Yep.
The Chargers, LT.
Yep.
The Chiefs.
They're
Priest Holmes?
I was thinking that they had, Priest Holmes. I know he got hurt a lot, but
Jamal Charles? Maybe. Okay. So, I think they got over 7,000 those two, I think. But let's keep Kansas City as an option in case of.
Yeah.
NFC East, we already named the Eagles. Washington, I don't think so, because I think John Riggins, I think. Dallas, obviously, no Emmitt Smith. The Giants, obviously, no Tiki. So, obviously, they're out. NFC North, sweetness for my Bears. Walter Payton, of course, is the answer there.
Yeah.
Adrian Peterson from Minnesota. Barry Sanders for Detroit. And I guess Amon Green for Green Bay.
Would have to be him.
I
can't think of anyone else for the Packers.
No, it's not the really I can think of either there. NFC West, Seattle, Sean Alexander.
And Marshawn.
And Marshawn, of course, yep. San Francisco, it's too long of a history not to have anybody that played there. Arizona could be an interesting guess. Adrian Morrell towards the end of his career, maybe.
Maybe Arizona's someone we should keep in mind because Arizona's a retirement home for most of these running backs.
Very true. Although, does this also take into account their St. Louis Cardinals history and their Chicago Cardinals history, which I'm probably sure it does. So
I would assume it would have to.
So there's somebody there before the forward pass, probably.
If that franchise has existed for a century and doesn't have a 7,000 career rusher,
that's a problem.
Get out the league.
That's a problem. And then the Rams, obviously, Marshall Faulk.
Yeah.
So that leaves us with Arizona, Kansas City, and I still think Atlanta's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have given up on the Falcons. You think the Falcons have it?
No,
he just mentioned them.
The Panthers.
I think so because I think Jonathan Stewart might have gotten over 7. I think he did. Jamal Anderson was good for a spurt. So was Michael Turner, but they weren't longevity. If we're talking Stewart was there for 9 years in Carolina, maybe. See, I don't think Atlanta, because also Atlanta, when Jamal Anderson was there, they had that one good year when they went to the Super Bowl, and then they just fell from grace after that.
Right.
So
but here's the thing, because even if Jonathan Stewart was there for 9 years, Rick, he would have had to have averaged at least 800 rushing yards a season. I don't know if he did that.
Well, except unless he got 1,200 or 1,400 one year and then had 600 the next. You can average that out, sure, but it's not a perfect science to it.
Yeah.
All right, I think let's eliminate Kansas City because I think Priest Holmes or Jamal Charles or somebody else we're forgetting for the Yankees. So Arizona, Atlanta, or Carolina. I'm not confident, but I'm comfortable with removing Carolina from this list because we have names that are there. So it's either Arizona or Atlanta.
Right. At the end of the day, we're perfect, Rick, so we got plenty of guesses to burn.
We do.
If we want to. But I know we're going for the perfect 7 for 7. I already know Rick wants that perfection.
I'm tempted to push the button for Atlanta. I'm really tempted to do it. I don't.
Arizona's giving you pause, right?
A little bit of pause, but not enough to make me consternate over it any further.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna make my guess for Atlanta, lock that in, and then turn away in shame when I'm wrong. So.
Atlanta.
Let's go with Atlanta.
Atlanta. What were the other two teams? It was
Arizona and Carolina. Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with Carolina. Jonathan Stewart is their leading rusher. Only one career year rushing over 1,000 yards.
What?
He's got only one career year, as per StatMuse, in which he rushed for over 1,000 yards. He has plenty of seasons that he had total yards above 1,000.
Right.
But rushing yards specifically, in 2009, he rushed for 1,133 yards, according to StatMuse.
Okay.
His total, he did play one season with the Giants in which he only played 3 games.
Uh-huh.
His total career rushing yards with the Carolina Panthers is 7,318 yards.
Oh.
So
All
good
right.
thing that was not our official guess.
Okay, we
The
got
Arizona Cardinals. Can you guess the leading rusher?
I don't know.
No,
It's one Otis Anderson.
Oh boy.
Really?
And Otis
Oh, boy.
Anderson is 1 yard shy of 8,000 career rushing yards with the Cardinals.
So we did guess him. Come on.
And the other team that was being thrown out there, the Kansas City Chiefs, their leading rusher is one Jamal Charles, who had an excellent career, but he was marred with injury. He rushed for 7,260 yards. The Falcons' leading rusher is Gerald Riggs with 6,631 rushing yards.
7 for 7.
Wow. Whew.
Let's go.
Oh my God.
Just so you know, Jamal Charles is the lowest rushing yard total for a career per team that is above 7,000 yards. So it's Jamal Charles and then LaShawn McCoy.
Okay.
Woo.
Wow.
Let's
Heart in your hand stuff right there, man.
7 for 7.
Good job, guys.
We did one better than Jordan.
Oh my God. You know, Justin, I gotta say this to you, and this is not a slight in any way. You did that about as similarly as possible to how Chris Tarrant would do British Millionaire, the £1 Million Question. Well, he would, if you had the right answer, he would say, if you guessed this one, you would have lost this amount of money. If you guessed this one, you would have lost this amount of money. Like I was like, oh my God, the drama, building it up. Bravo to you. Bravo to you for that.
I've said it before on the show, and I feel like I haven't said it in a while, and forgive me, but ladies and gentlemen, one day, Justin will be hosting one of the top game shows in America. Are you seeing some of the jamokes they're hiring to host this stuff? Come on, Justin.
Put my name in the hat. Throw my name in the ring.
Clears them. Justin
Absolutely.
clears these losers. Come on.
Like, I'm sorry, but Tom Cavanaugh, you were great in Ed, but you are not a good game show host. Oh, God.
Oh, Lord.
Awful.
Justin, well done. Round of applause for our game.
Bravo.
My God, that was good.
Woo.
That was good. All right. Do we have anything, any other games today, Justin?
You know what? How about another trivia? You want to throw it in?
Rick,
I got one more.
How you feeling, Rick?
I got one more in the chamber.
Shall we?
Yeah, listen, why not? Double or nothing. Let's do it.
Hey,
What do you got?
now, since 2010, now, again, this is going to disregard anything that happened prior to 2010. So since 2010, 3 running backs in the NFL have eclipsed 10,000 yards. Now, if they played in a 2009 season, it does not count because we're not counting those yards.
Right.
Since 2010, starting at 0 in 2010, 3 running backs have eclipsed 10,000 rushing yards.
Okay.
Let's hear them.
Okay, so the first thing that pops into my head when we talk about this list, and not an official guess by any means, but Jurg. I don't know if he might have played before 2010, but Frank Gore.
That's a good guess. Yep. Yeah, Frank Gore's tough because he did play a little bit before 2010, but he stuck around for so long.
So this is a good example because Frank Gore technically has 16,000 career rushing yards.
Yeah.
So he started his career in 2005. So does that mean he eclipsed? I'm not saying he didn't. I'm not saying he did. All I'm saying is you're not taking into account his entire career. You're taking into account anything from 2010 on.
So that okay, that's what you mean by that.
So Rick, since 2010, these 3 running backs have gotten 10,000 yards just since 2010 alone.
Okay.
Which I still think Frank Gore we should consider. Because I really feel like he more so hit his peak in the 2010s, no? Like, he was a good running back, but...
Yeah, but there was that one year that he had 1,600 plus.
Was that in...
his second year? That was 06.
Really? Oh, damn.
Yeah. I think, but okay, so he got into the league in 05. but then 06, 07, 08, I think he eclipsed 1,000 each time. But if we're talking 16,000 total yards, that doesn't seem like that's enough to dissuade me.
Do you want to put him on the side for now as we think of the other running backs?
Let's throw him to the side for right now. Okay, throw him to the side for right now. We'll come back to him later.
So I have one to throw at you that I'm pretty confident in.
Okay.
Adrian Peterson.
Yeah. Because he started later. He started in 07, right?
Yeah, 07 or 08, yeah.
07.
07, okay.
Yeah. I think that's a really good one. I do.
Because he also, like, his 2K yard season was since 2010, so.
Yeah, I think so.
He also had that 2K yard season after a 20 season.
Yeah.
That dude was not human.
He wasn't, but he also did have a very good second year too in 08. I think it was like 17 or 1,800 yards too. So, but I think he had enough yards to circumvent that. So I think AP is a good shout.
Yeah, I'll throw that out as my first guess. Adrian Peterson.
Adrian Peterson, since 2010, in 138 games played, has 10,434 rushing yards, made for third on the list.
Okay, third on the list. When did Shady McCoy start?
Ooh.
You want me to let you know his rookie year?
I feel
2009 was his rookie year.
I was going to say, I think he started just in 09.
If he started in 09, that means he only played one season in the aughts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure he's over a 10,000-yard rusher in his career. The only question is, how did he do in that rookie season?
You think so? He kind of slowed down at the end of his career.
Yeah, but I think he still aggregated enough at the time. I think so.
His final year in Tampa Bay, he played in 10 games and rushed for 31 yards.
Like, that's what I'm saying, man. They did not use him at the end of his career at all. Nobody did.
Right, but again, so even if he built up his entire career in the 2010s.
Mm-hmm. You're saying how good was he at his peak, which is fair.
But even in his rookie, remember, he was in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And we just established they did not have a 7,000-yard rusher.
Yeah.
And he only played one season in the 2000s in Philadelphia.
And we know, so because of before, so this actually helps us, he had just shy of 7K yards in Philly.
Right.
So now we have to ask ourselves, from when he left Philly, and majority of that post-Philly time was in Buffalo.
Yep.
Do we think from Buffalo to the end of his career, did he eclipse a little over 3,000 yards? That's what we have to ask ourselves, basically.
Yeah.
Did Chip Kelly ruin this man's career so much he did not achieve 10K in his career?
You also have to take into account the 1 year in Philadelphia that was his rookie year, because you got to take out those yards also.
Right.
Right, so but that's what I'm saying.
It's more than 3,000 yards.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Even if that was like 600 yards, let's say, I still think that in the 2010s and beyond, he was good enough to get over that hump.
God, this is rough. Did Derrick Henry achieve 10K yards yet, Rick?
No, he has not. I don't believe so.
Damn it!
I believe not.
It would be so nice if he could have.
It'd be nice and tidy. I agree with you there.
Make things easier.
Oh my God, so much.
Who else do we got? Frank Gore.
Gore
is there.
Shady.
Beast mode. Marshawn.
See, he started like mid-late 2000s. I don't know.
I think his rookie year was in the late 2000s, though.
You think so?
I think so. I think it was like 07 he came into the league.
Yeah, but that's still 4 years. The weird thing with Marshawn Lynch is just like he never had at least it never felt like he had he never had a yardage season like Adrian Peterson or CJ2K or Jamal Charles. Like those were his contemporaries.
Yeah.
And it never felt like he had a bunch of rushing touchdowns. He was such a physical force of a runner, but he never had a season like those guys ever did.
Yeah.
Unless I'm forgetting a season in his career where he just went off. Like,
No, you know what I'm thinking? I'm remembering when he was a rookie in Buffalo, though, he was pretty damn good.
right.
So I'll cast him out. So it's either because I can't think of anybody else.
Right.
I'm thinking Shady or Frank Gore.
So do you want to just throw those two guesses for now and we wait and see, or
we were 7 for 7. This was just Justin's way of going to get back to us. So
yeah. Basically, this is just this is Justin trying to make us avoid going 10 for 10.
Yeah. Let's hold Frank Gore off for now. I feel more confident in McCoy.
We'll see.
Shady McCoy.
All right. LaShawn McCoy is a career 10,000 rushing yards. He's got 11,102. He only had 637 in his first year in Philly, which would put him at 10,465, first place on our list.
Oh,
Okay.
9 for 9.
I'm trying to
31 in between first and third.
I'm trying to go through the list of the guys that I know that are above 10,000 yards that played in the 2010s. There's only a few names that stick out to me. LT, but that was in the twilight of his career.
Oh yeah, the entirety of his peak was to the 2000s.
Steven Jackson, same thing.
Yeah.
He was 04 to 15.
Right.
Edgerrin James was done in 09.
Yeah.
Ricky Williams was 2000s.
Yep.
Frank Gore had the longevity, and he had a renaissance in Indianapolis too.
Yeah, the thing with some of the other guys we could potentially think of here that maybe had really, really good individual seasons, it was just a year. Like a guy who he only had one really good season, parlayed it into a contract, and we haven't heard from him since. DeMarco Murray had a really good final season with the Cowboys, got paid, never became the same guy.
That's true.
But was really good for a stretch of time in the 2010s where I'm sure maybe he has like over 6-7K in his career potentially.
That's true.
I don't think he even sniffs this list.
So 05, 06, 07, 08, 09. That's 5 years.
Yes.
Frank Gore has rushed for 16,000 yards in his career.
Yeah.
That would mean he'd have to average in those 5 years
1,200 at least.
I don't think he did.
Because those were some bad San Fran teams, no?
Yeah, they were. That was the Mike Singletary and the Jim Tomsula years, man.
Alex Smith.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nobody else we can think of.
Right. It's just, I'm really trying to like rack my brain around just to make sure we're not missing someone.
I can't think of anybody though. That's the thing. Like we named the top 2 guys that we could think of.
Right.
In AP and Shady.
You guys are missing a couple guys that are like the top guys around then. I'm not saying that those are the answers, but there's some good running backs that I'm sure you haven't mentioned from the 2010s on. You
can mention them at the end once we
absolutely
get our third guy here. I don't know. Rick, do you want to try to go quick team by team and think of running backs since 2010s?
Again, you're going team by team?
No. I just said that as a joke. We have a program to get to here eventually. What do you think, Rick? I'm with you with Frank Gore. I think maybe there's a chance he didn't get 6K before 2010.
Yeah, because there's not a lot of other guys I can think of that eclipse 10K that are active or played in the 2010s.
And played a significant amount of time in 2010s.
Right. Again, Steven Jackson's the only one, but he was 04 he was drafted.
Right.
I think it's Frank Gore. Once again, I'll do this and I'll hide Frank Gore. Lock it in.
Frank Gore.
All right. Well, let's first look at Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn Lynch was drafted in 2007, and Jurg, believe it or not, he did have a couple of monster years, especially with Seattle. His career high was 1,590 yards and 12 total touchdowns. He had an excellent year there, but
I stand by what I said. He never had a season like Adrian Peterson or Chris Johnson.
Jurg, that's the wrong answer. If he's brought up first, it's the wrong answer.
He did eclipse 10,400 yards. but only by 13. And like you said, he had a few 1,000-yard rushers in his time in Buffalo, so he is not the answer. You are the people that I said that you were forgetting. One, Ezekiel Elliott, who is 5th on the list, but did not eclipse 10,000 yards.
Right.
Eric Henry is 4th on the list.
Right.
And Frank Gore, over 16 seasons, averaged exactly 1,000 yards a season. And is 2nd on the list all time at 10,439 since the 2010s. Yeah, he played 16 seasons. He has exactly 16,000 yards.
10. Perfect freaking 10. Give us our gold medals.
Oh, man. Take that, Trinity Thomas. Oh, woo. That's tough.
Whew. Rick, we deserve that.
I just dropped 20 pounds worth of sweat out of this trivia contest. The first 40 minutes of the show, yeah.
Holy hell. No, again, I'm saying this again. Justin deserves it because Justin deserves to host a game show one day because that was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. Whew. Wow. Wow.
Oh, my God.
All right.
That's all. That's all. That was phenomenal.
Breathe a sigh of relief. Move on.
Justin, how hopeful were you when we were starting to kind of go away from Frank Gore?
No, I kind of had a feeling that as soon as I asked the question, you guys were kind of on it. I mean, the first 3 players you named were the 3 players.
Yeah.
So I didn't have
considering all the other names.
ton of yeah.
It's that multiple choice question you get where you cross out the answer that you thought was the wrong answer and choose another one, but you should go with the original guess in the first place. That's what we were about to do.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think we were ever going to go away from Frank Gore. It's just we had to circulate the names just to make sure that we didn't forget anybody.
Shady was the one where I thought you'd get tripped up.
Yeah. Just because, at least for me, his post-Philly career is such a blur. I don't remember so much of it.
Well, he had a couple good years in Buffalo. I think he eclipsed 1,000 yards twice. In one of them, he was pretty close. And then the 4th one, he missed a few games, but I mean, it's like 600 yards. It wasn't terrible. And he had about 5,000 yards over 5,000 yards in the 2010s in Philly. Yeah. So, and his Kansas City year wasn't bad either. His Kansas City, the one year he was in Kansas City, he had 450 yards.
Yeah.
So,
LaShawn McCoy, I feel like he's going to have to be a player. We've talked about stuff we could do in the offseason and future off seasons in this program. When we eventually maybe go either team or player retrospectives, LaShawn McCoy is a player I think we have to do a player retrospective of.
I like it.
I think he's someone because we get new fans in sports. I was having this conversation with some friends a week ago. Anybody below the age of 17, I feel like as a Heat fan, I need to make them realize how good Dwayne Wade was at his peak.
Yep.
And that 2006 Dwayne Wade is legitimately one of the 5 greatest individual stretches of a player we've ever seen in our lifetime in the modern era. LaShawn McCoy is going to have to be somebody that we as NFL fans need to remind people as the years pass by. Oh, he was really good.
Yeah.
He was, let me just say, he's one of the most elusive players I've ever seen on the field.
Absolutely.
As much as you don't want to give him credit sometimes because he's that kind of guy, and he talks a lot of trash, and he's from Philly, being a New Yorker, he would get the ball, and he was just untouchable for stretches of the game, and it was wild because that was also when Philly had other guys like Deshaun Jackson was like that. He was unguardable. Michael Vick at points in his Philly tenure was unguardable, but they somehow never strung it into major success. So those are interesting teams to think about.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I agree with that.
Absolutely. We're gonna have fun in future off seasons here when we get down to it. We are going to have a time, to say the least. Speaking of a time, as we transition away, and that'll be the end of the games this week because, good Lord, the trivia challenged us on this one. We do have some time here for a quick mind-blowing fact. So, Rick, entertain the people. What is this week's mind-blowing fact?
So initially, I had discovered something that I thought was interesting, and then in further research, I found a wrinkle to it, but then a more interesting fact to it after that. Since the inception, gentlemen, of the NFC South back in 2002, each team has both finished in last place in their division and also appeared in at least one Super Bowl. Now the wrinkle to this is that this is also the case with the NFC West. So there's 2 divisions that have done this. However, this is the more mind-blowing fact that I just discovered today. From 2002 through 2008, so going to the 09 season, after the 09 season, the team that finished in last place from 02 to 08 won the division the next year. So in 02, it was Carolina who finished in last place. They won the division the next year. 03 was Atlanta. They won in 04. 04 was Tampa. They won in 05. New Orleans, 06. Tampa, 07. New Orleans, 09. Yeah. And Carolina. So if you think about that, maybe there's a way, like a way to break it up where a team kind of just finds its way through. Surprisingly, has a terrible year, comes back. We think about the NFC East being the division of who knows what's happening. This time around, it's the South.
Indeed.
Yeah.
To say the very least. First off, perfect mind-blowing fact. Rick.
Thank you.
It perfectly aligns. Look, this entire show has aligned with this damn division, and I don't know if we're going to get another episode that perfectly builds up to a division breakdown better than this. The fanfare we've given this division is utterly outstanding. So for anyone that thinks that we maybe are too hard on teams and divisions sometimes, this right here, let this be proof. From trivia to the fact to the breakdown we're about to do, we're going full NFC South this episode for the people. For the people.
Yes, for those in New Orleans and Tampa.
Hey, come on now. Are you telling me that Carolina doesn't watch our show?
Yeah, it's Carolina.
And we've lost our Carolina fan base. Thanks, Rick. Anyways, as Rick destroys us one NFL fan base at a time here on the show, let's get to the crux of the episode, ladies and gentlemen. It is the Sports Agents of Chaos divisional breakdown. As I've mentioned, over the upcoming 8 weeks, we are going to go across the NFL landscape to each division one by one, and we're going to break down each of the 4 teams in the division. I'm not promising equal time because, well, some of these teams just aren't going to get equal time. Tennessee, I'm looking at you. But we will be breaking down each team. We're going to be talking about basically a little time capsule of what their offseason was, how they get better, how did they get worse, and ultimately at the end of it, like I said, we are going to tell you what our personal rankings are 1 through 4. This is all going to culminate in an episode after the 8th divisional breakdown that we have, where we give you our full, each of us will give you our full 1 through 7 playoffs, who's going to win each division, who our 3 wildcard teams are going to be as we go into the season, which of course will be highlighted by the second annual, or is it second annual or second ever? Either or. Second ever Sports Agents of Chaos NFL Pick Challenge. I cannot wait, to say the very least, for that. So, guys, as Rick gives us that fact, and it's going to be interesting to see if that fact will hold true to this next NFL season, because, well, technically speaking, 3 NFC South teams tied last season for last in the division, weirdly enough. So it's going to be fun to talk about this. Now, the way I'm going about this is just how it's personally listed for me on ESPN standings, and per ESPN standings, for what it's showing me, it's showing the Atlanta Falcons are at the bottom of the list. So by proxy, the Atlanta Falcons are going to be the first team to talk about in this division. The Atlanta Falcons, I think, are very interesting because we talked about them a little bit in the offseason of what they did at the draft, which is getting the supreme talent known as Bijan Robinson and just bolstering the skill position group of that team going forward. They made some defensive additions in the offseason, a.k.a. purging whatever defensive line pieces of the Saints that they could, a la David Onyemata and Caden Ellis. And they also bought low and maybe will be able to get some value out of a former top 3 overall pick in the draft, Jeff Okudah. So a lot of new faces in Atlanta to make a difference here. But I think something that we've all pointed at here will be, is this, and maybe not more so is this, but we believe on the show as a whole that this is probably looking like a make or break year for Arthur Smith and his coaching regime in Atlanta. So that's really the crux of it. Justin, I'm going to throw it over to you first. We look at the Atlanta Falcons, and one of 2 things is going to happen for this team. It's kind of what we could say this for all 4 of these teams. But I think Atlanta is one of the 2 in particular we could say this about. They're either going to finish first in the division, or they're getting the top 2 pick next season. Maybe top 3. Because Arizona may have 1 and 2. So, that being said, what are your thoughts on Atlanta going into the 2023 season?
Honestly, I'm worried. I like a lot of the things that they've done, but there's still a lot of question marks and a lot of things that they're missing. Quarterback being one of them. I know that they have Desmond Ridder, who looked okay towards the end of last year, and they did sign Taylor Heineke as a backup just in case. they're one of those teams that was scrappy last year, but they lost games they should have won, and they were in games that they shouldn't have been in. So it's kind of hard to predict what I expect for them. The skill positions, players, at the top, obviously they have Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, and Cordero Patterson are the running backs. Drake London is there, Kyle Pitts. But outside of those guys, you're only going to play one, maybe two running backs at a time, and then you don't really have much else in terms of catching the ball outside of Drake London, and hopefully Kyle Pitts has some sort of resurgence. So I don't know exactly what they're planning on doing this year. The defense didn't light anyone on fire last year. They had their struggles. It is an easier division, but I would say that I would think most of the other teams in their division have made more strides forward than the Atlanta Falcons have.
Fair analysis, to say the very least. I think one of the things that might give the Falcons a, not edge more so, but you could argue is in terms of a group that I think they may win this division with, if they do have that chance, is the offensive line. I think you could argue from left tackle to right tackle and the three guys in between, they might have the best offensive line in this division. When you have Jake Matthews at left tackle, who's been doing it for so long, you have you extended both guys on the right side of that line in Lindstrom and McGarry. You have Matthew Bergeron, who you drafted in this past draft, which the three of us were very high on as an offensive lineman pick going into the draft. And then you have a guy who could definitely do the job in Drew Dahlman in center. I think if there's one thing Atlanta could potentially rely on, that especially for that offense will be key, will be the offensive line, being able to give Desmond Ridder plenty of time. I have a personal note about that offense that I think needs to be the key for them. But before that, I don't want to take too much away from the Podfather himself. Rick, what are your notes about the Falcons going into 2023?
So I think Justin hits on a lot of good points here, in that this is really the make or break for Desmond Ridder as well. Higher prospect for a quarterback going into last season, but he's also a third-round guy. So they give him the keys because they got rid of Marcus Mariota. They brought in Taylor Heineke, all hail. And so now the question is, does that make them better? I think the addition of Bijan Robinson was definitely a surprise to a lot of people because, again, Tyler Algier came out of nowhere to have over 1,000 yards rushing last year. And I was high on him as a very strong player last year in last year's draft. They did add some pieces towards the end of the draft. Again, we talked about Bergeron a lot. Clark Phillips is a fourth-round corner who might be a really strong player for them. And Zach Harrison on the DN and the defensive side of the ball, too, is also going to be a good rookie to look at. What they did do as well is they added extra pieces around for weaponry. They have, along with Drake London, they added Mac Hollins, they added Scotty Miller, so they have more wide receivers in the room. They added Jonnu Smith to pair with Kyle Pitts. And also, don't knock this. They added Calais Campbell as well on the defensive side of the ball, too. So that creates an interesting little running tandem of if they're right, Calais Campbell and Grady Jarrett as well. So I think that could be a very interesting, group to handle. The secondary, you hope for good things out of guys like Jeff Okudah and AJ Terrell, really trying to make sure they can lock down this division. But again, like Justin said, this division's a lot easier than it was last year. And so there's some benefits to that. There's benefits to Atlanta finishing quote unquote last, because that means, you get to have the opponents that are the odd ones out, like the Arizonas. You get to face them. You get to face Washington. So there's some elements of that could be interesting here. I think this definitely is make or break for Arthur Smith, but I think this year might be an interesting one for Atlanta, because I think they're 7-10 to 8-9 to 9-8 isn't that far of a reach. And Justin's right. They were a couple of games away here and there. They had no business being in some games they were in, and they should have won some games they shouldn't have. But a lot of it also has to do with the fact that you started Marcus Mariota, which is a failure on your part. And then Desmond Ridder got his chance, and he was a rookie. Now with an extra seasoning, with a better team, could be interesting. Let's see what they do here for the season.
Yeah. My ultimate notes for this team will be Desmond Ridder. Is Arthur Smith going to open up the playbook for him in terms of making him a bit more mobile? In his last season in Cincinnati, which made him the tantalizing prospect he became, which we know that draft class was very interesting to say, at the very least quarterback-wise, Ridder was pretty active when it came to using his legs. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be the next great running quarterback. I'm not out here proclaiming that. But I was looking at his game log his last season in Cincinnati. He had double-digit carries in all but 3 games. This was a guy that his ability to maneuver a little bit out of the pocket and make some plays with his legs to open up that offense was a big thing in Cincinnati. And I looked at, and again, I know it was very limited playing time, but he didn't even sniff double-digit carries per game in his performances last season when he started. So I think if Arthur Smith wants to have success in this offense, I think allowing Desmond Ridder to be able to be a little bit of a playmaker, to be that guy, will be the big thing for the offensive side of things. Because I think overall, Desmond Ridder, I think what I could say confidently, I think for himself, he's got a great career as a backup quarterback minimum in the NFL. I think he's going to be a good backup quarterback for a long time to come. Good kid, confident, good attitude. I feel. I think he should be the next backup quarterback that randomly makes $45 million in his career for just carrying a clipboard. And I mean, more power to all the backup quarterbacks that do that. But I think to me, the biggest backbreaker for me will ultimately be the Falcons defense, guys. I look at this, and yes, you mentioned a couple of guys, Rick, and the big thing to me is that you said if they're right, it's a massive. You need to say if for at least 6 or 7 of the starters projected wise on this Atlanta Falcons defense. It's Calais Campbell to see if he has maybe one last gasp for a season in his career, and who knows if maybe they even trade him at the deadline if they depending on how things go. You have David Onyemata, which I mean, still a solid enough player, but how much are you really expecting out of him? Onyemata's backup as of now is Eddie Goldman, a guy who's trying to recover, his career based off of how his tenure in Chicago went from being a well-paid nose tackle to now not so much being. I mean, he was out off that team for a reason. Grady Jarrett is a guy who's consistently been up and down in his career, which sucks to say for that Falcons team. But they at one point they had some young talented defenders, but not so much so anymore. More Lorenzo Carter and Troy Anderson. Caden Ellis, how much is he going to contribute? AJ Terrell and Jesse Bates, actually, their free agency signing, are the 2 definitive guys in that defensive core. But then can Richie Grant be a good second safety in that backfield? And I love Jeff Okudah. I want the best for Jeff Okudah, but you're relying on a lot of young guys in that secondary to take a leap that either they haven't shown yet in their career, or if it's the rookie like Clark Phillips, are going to play a bigger role than what most would imagine from a guy at that point. I think for me personally, that's my breaking point with this Falcons team. It's the defense that's making me take a lot of drawbacks with them, because just because you face weak competition doesn't mean the defense can't play bad.
Look, they were 24th against the rush last year, 22nd against the pass. They gave up over 40 total touchdowns, and they were the second lowest sack total of any defense. That's not going to win you games. And I understand that they did make some moves. I do like their offensive line. It's probably the only consistent position on that team that I would, give credit to. Like I said, they have some exciting young skill players, but adding a 37-year-old Calais Campbell and a rookie running back is not going to instill confidence in me, even in a weak division. And that's where my concerns are. I'm not sure that Arthur Smith is the coach. I'm not sure that they have the quarterback, which is going to be important. And, they can have 2 guys that rush for 1,000 yards next year and set a record. And if they won 7 games, I'd be impressed. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm not high on them, though.
Real quick, just as a memory server, is Arthur Smith the guy that Justin has tabbed as his coach to be fired this season? Okay.
Yep.
Just want to make sure.
Yep.
I'm not saying that to mar Justin's analysis. I'm just double checking to make sure.
It's ironic if you think about it, because Arthur Smith is to this season what Matt Rule was to last season.
He really is. It's exactly the same. I had more faith in the Carolina quarterbacks last year than I do in the Atlanta quarterbacks this year, which should say something. But I have more faith. I have way more faith in the skill positions of Atlanta this year than I did in Carolina last year.
Yeah.
The difference is I have zero faith in the Atlanta defense. The Carolina defense, at least going into last year, was supposed to be very good. And they were. They weren't the best defense in the league, but they were still a very good defense. They have some young pieces. They're expected to be a good defense coming in this year. I don't expect a ton from Atlanta. Mm-hmm. They're an offensive-minded team to begin with. Arthur Smith is known as an offensive guy. And, again, they've made some offensive moves that can be praised. I mean, I loved Drake London coming out. He had a good year last year. I loved Kyle Pitts coming out. He was drafted a little high, but, he was good his first year. Hopefully he can come back and have a better third year and, shake off that sophomore slump. And they have a good offensive line, which should help their young running backs. Cordero Patterson's a switchblade. Do they have the answer at quarterback? Do they have the answer at coach? I don't know. I don't think so.
The question, too, as well, is that these younger guys that are there, can they hold on to the ball? Because that was the big key with both Ridder and London last year, was that they had a large number of fumbles and lost those fumbles as well. So ball security is very important. And the thing with Patterson, there's talk about them trading him or moving him.
He's an older player now. He can do a lot, but he missed a lot of time last year. And now they have 2 running backs that they're going to have in front of him. Is it worth paying him all that money to have him as their third string guy? Yeah. Maybe he's better Swiss Army knife on a team like,
the Jets,
contending.
The Bears.
I wasn't going to say
the
the
Texans.
Texans. I was actually
Well,
thinking maybe the Chiefs, but everyone should want to
the
be traded.
the rumors that I've seen about Patterson are to Dallas.
I think that would be an excellent move for them.
Pair him with Pollard. Yeah, it could be an excellent move there for sure. But again, you have an embarrassment riches at one part, and if you can make the trade with Dallas, maybe that gets you something to help you out on defense if it's just a player for player swap. But I don't know.
Maybe some picks, maybe a viable defensive player. Absolutely.
Something like that. Yeah.
We'll see, to say the very least. So a lot of questions with the Atlanta Falcons going into this, to say the very least, although they will not be the last NFC South team we have all those questions about. That I can promise you, ladies and gentlemen. All right, like I said, we're going in order from how it finished last. So next on this list, according to the standings of last year from what I am viewing, the boys down in the Bayou, who they say the Saints going to win the division? Nobody is saying the Saints are going to win the division.
Now with Dennis Allen as their head coach.
I did last year.
Yeah, and somebody on this podcast, I don't know who, said that they weren't sure that Dennis Allen was a great coach and that they thought the offense would take a step back. And he was told by people that he was wrong about that.
There's no need to involve Sandoval in any of this, jerk.
Sandoval was with me, damn it.
No,
I miss him.
He's never with you.
Sandoval agreed with me about the Saints.
Offense, everyone knew the offense would take a step back. It was the defense that we expected to be really good last year.
Yeah.
They disappointed.
Big time.
I mean, they were a top defense to begin with going into last year, and then they added Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu and they added someone else. I can't think of who it is. Well, let me look at their depth chart. But they had a wildly disappointing defensive season last year.
They did. Which is funny because they were at co-D coordinators last year. Chris Richards no longer on any staff. And Ryan Nielsen's now the DC for Atlanta. So
Jesus Christ, Atlanta took everything defensively from the Saints. They took their DC, they took their defensive tackle in Onyemata, and they took a pass rusher. Jesus, they took everything. All right. Now, intro to this team aside, the New Orleans Saints are going to certainly be a team to look out for, because I think this is going to be the definition of how far can a quarterback really bring you if he's better than what you had last season. Gone are famous Jameis, Taysom Hill. Well, Taysom Hill's still there, but he ain't going to be the quarterback this season. But gone are famous Jameis and Taysom Hill being the starters for the Saints going into a season. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is a brand new era of Derek Carr. Derek Carr is the New Orleans Saints quarterback, having signed with the team after a release from the Las Vegas Raiders. He goes to a team that has some skill position talent on the surface, but oh, sweet heaven and God, there are a lot of questions about this talent. To say the very least, Alvin Kamara is certainly a guy that you would love as a number one running back, but we're still kind of waiting to see what his future is looking like, if there's going to be suspension pending anytime soon, because, some people just want to be stupid off the field. But even behind him is Jamal Williams, who is a very talented RB2 and a touchdown machine from last season with the Detroit Lions. Again, Detroit, why didn't you keep him? But then from that, you have the skill position group that has Chris Olave, one of the top rookie wide receivers from last season. You have some potential guys that you're hoping can break out as your third, fourth, or fifth wide receivers, and the likes of Traquan Smith, James Washington, Rashid Shaheed. But the main thing, ultimately, to this skill position group is Juwan Johnson. No, it's not. It is if Michael Thomas can finally overcome all the issues he's had over the last couple of seasons, whether it be injuries, whether it be just not clicking with the offense in the limited time he had last season. Can Michael Thomas finally reascend to the point where he was at previously, which, okay, maybe not as the best offensive player in the league, because he literally won an Offensive Player of the Year award. It's BS that he won it over Christian McCaffrey, but my saltiness regardless. Michael Thomas, I don't think he will be an Offensive Player of the Year candidate again in his career, but at least a 1,000+ yard receiver again, I think, is something that the Saints need to hope for. Aside from that, you have an offensive line that I was talking about the Falcons. This is probably, tying up there with the Falcons for the best offensive line in the division, with the likes of Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, Ryan Ramczyk. The big question will be who will be the left tackle for the full season, because while Ramczyk can play both the left and the right, you're kind of hoping that guy you spent a first-round pick on a year ago is able to be the franchise left tackle going forward and play more than just, 4 or 5 games that he played. And I think he only started one of them. Trevor Penning is who I'm talking about. So they'll hope for health out of Trevor Penning this season. And then you look at the defense, which Justin was referring to earlier. You still have veterans on that team that are still very good at what they do. The likes of Cam Jordan, who that dude has just aged like a fine wine. He still continues to be a very talented, very reliable pass rusher, to say the least, in his career. And the good defensive backfield that they still host on this season, with Marshawn Lattimore as the number one corner, with Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus May as the safety tandem. The big question mainly being who's going to be the definitive second corner opposite of Marshawn Lattimore. As of now, it's looking like Paulson Adebo is going to be the guy, but they do have the veteran Bradley Roby there, who can kind of swing between corner and safety, as well as some solid linebackers there. So overall, talent is around the Saints. And I think one thing that could help this team give them that edge, guys, is talent. At the end of the day, talent in this game wins. And if you look at position by position, there are certain spots where you can argue talent in favor of the Saints that give them a slight edge over the other teams in this division. That being said, though, some of the questions we just had about the Falcons, I think, can pertain here. What quarterback performance out of Derek Carr are we going to see? Are we going to see the really good Derek Carr, who has thrown for over 30-plus touchdowns in a season in his career, despite the fact that Justin seems to never remember that he did that? Or are we going to see the Derek Carr who's 22 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, not terrible, but not that great, to say the very least? Which version of him are we going to see? And can Dennis Allen coach his way out of a wet paper bag that's, been thrown into a Mardi Gras festival that has a bunch of beads on it at this point? Who knows? Rick, I'm going to throw it to you first. What are your thoughts about the Saints going into 2023?
You know what the funny thing is really about the Saints? If you look at their schedule objectively,
yes,
there's only really one game you should be concerned about, and that's the game at Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Every other game is relatively, I would say, winnable. I mean, Tennessee, Carolina, Green Bay, Tampa, New England, Houston, Jacksonville, maybe. Indy, Chicago, Atlanta, Detroit is the only other one maybe you'd say you could be scared of, but who knows what they're even going to be. You go down from Carolina, the Giants, and the Rams, Bucs, and Falcons to end the year. There's no game that's there that I would say they're going to be the underdog really in, except for maybe Minnesota, maybe Detroit if they're good towards the end of the year. But that's looking objectively. Now let's bring things back to sensibility here. This team is an enigma because Derek Carr is here for 3 years with $105 million in the bank. You don't know if Michael Thomas is going to regain the form where he was AP Offensive Player of the Year before the injury. They don't have Kamara for a bit, do they? Or do they have Kamara week 1?
I think they have him to start, but
okay.
I think it's just looming what could happen with him.
Yes, because obviously Jamal Williams is only really seemingly good within 5 yards of the end zone. Because, how many touchdowns did he have last year? Like 22 million or something like that for Detroit or whatever it was.
Yeah, sounds about right.
There's a lot of ways that this season could go wrong for New Orleans as well. I mean, again, it's the same pieces on defense with a brand new D coordinator in Joe Woods. Does that really inspire anybody to be a good team? A good defensive unit when you have the same guys that are just taking direction from a new guy? I don't know. I mean, they added some guys, sure, but, it really does boil down to, is Derek Carr the true answer here? Can they use Taysom Hill properly? Is Michael Thomas really going to come back? And will Chris Olave take a better step forward? Because, again, there are still a lot of differing questions for New Orleans, but you could see this team. This is how uncertain this team is. They could be 6-0 going into Week 7 against Jacksonville, or 2-4 going into Week 7, and you never know what it's going to be. And so that's why I caution against picking the Saints in this division, because you never really are certain as to which team is going to appear, and they could be just fine, but just fine could be 7-10 like they were last year. Because what's really changed as much with them? I mean, again, you hope the best for Olave. Is Derek Carr going to be that guy to find him in open spaces? Who knows? Very questionable team this year.
Right. Before I throw it to you, Justin, I just want to say real quick as a podcast-wide thing, can we all agree that, for the content, for the memes, and for the sake of the show, we hope that the winner of this division is like 6-11 or 5-12 somehow?
Oh, God.
So we can have a 6-11 team in the playoffs?
That would be something. That'd be terrible for the NFL.
I don't even know if that's even possible. 7-10, I'll give you, but 6-11? Oh.
I'm hoping that somehow we get a 6-11 NFC South team that wins.
So the winner of the division will be a team that could also be a top 5 draft pick.
Yes.
If they weren't the winner of the division, because they're locked into that playoff spot outside of the lottery.
You'd almost want to not win the division.
Right.
To get a better draft pick.
Right? That's basically what this division is, if you think about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're two of these teams who have traded their first-round picks for this season, you kind of hope that you could somehow end up winning the division even with a bad record. So
yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's that. All right, Justin, the actual analysis here to the Saints. What are you thinking about the New Orleans Saints here going into 2023? I think Rick brings up all the valid points. Again, to me, the ultimate X factor will be what kind of Derek Carr are we going to see? But, what else is there that the people need to consider?
Look, this is the same team that they beat Seattle week 5, 39-32, and then lost to the Arizona Cardinals 42-34. You know what I mean? Like 2 weeks later, this team was up and down. I mean, they blew out the Raiders, who we all thought was going to be decent last year, 24-0. If you remember this game, the Raiders didn't cross midfield until the 2-minute warning in the second half. All right,
and that's their quarterback.
Yeah, and then they lost twice to Carolina, who was not supposed to be great last year. So it's the question to me is one, are they going to be healthy? Because unfortunately they had a ton of injuries again last year. And two, what's up with the coaching? Because I don't think there's an issue with the skill position players. I mean, if you look up and down this roster, like you said, Jurg, it's loaded with talent. They have guys that have done the job before. And I think they drafted well this year. I mean, I'm excited to see what Brian Brissy does for them next to Cam Jordan and whoever they have on the other side. I think that they could be a good team. They were a top 5 team in sacks last year, but they were also a bottom 5 team in interceptions.
Yeah.
So they were a top 5 team in yards given up against the pass. I think they had the second least amount of yards per pass, but they gave up more passing touchdowns than they did rushing touchdowns. So
it's a weird team.
They're all over the place. I think that they really need to have their coach turn around and get this team under control and get this team playing more consistently. And if they can accomplish that, I think that they have a legitimate shot to win this division and even maybe win some games in the playoffs if they get the right matchup. I don't know if they will, but there's a chance for the Saints. I really don't think it's a player problem.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, Justin. I think with this team, if we're going, here's the thing. As much as I've said that this division, I've said on multiple podcasts that this is the most wide open division in the league. This has nothing to do with the talent. If we're looking just strictly, put everything in a vacuum. If we're looking at this team, at each team in this division, from a strict talent perspective, we're all picking the Saints to win. And it's by a fairly sizable margin. But we do have to look at all these other things. We do have to consider the fact that there is some inconsistency with Derek Carr. The duality of man, 300 yards one game, can't make it past goddamn halfway point in the field in another game. That's just a fact of what happened to Derek Carr. You could say Josh McDaniels, and to be fair, I too would want to punch Josh McDaniels in the face at the end of it, especially if he made my significant other cry, but that's neither here nor there. Because the Raiders apparently made Derek Carr's wife cry at some point. But that happened with him. You have Alvin Kamara, supremely talented. No one will deny that. But the future's still in the air. Like, we could have him for the first 3 weeks of the season, and then boom, the NFL is going to suspend him for 4, 5, 6 games. You know what's going to happen. We have Chris Olave, which, like you guys have said, phenomenal rookie season last year. Is he going to be able to build off of that? He is the definitive number one on this team now. For after a full season of last year, teams have full tape on him. You don't think some teams are going to be able to cover him a little bit better? And especially just noteworthy, at least 2 of the 3 other teams in the league have really good in this division, have really good secondaries. Worth noting. And then you have the offensive line here, where the guy who's supposed to have a big impact, Trevor Penning, only limited to 5 games. And like you mentioned, Justin, you have a team that injuries really held back the defensive backcourt. The defensive line was good. Maybe the defensive backs are healthy this season, but now they lost some pieces on that defensive line between Onyemata and Ellis, who both went to Atlanta. That's 15 sacks last season. So a team that finished really well in sacks needs to find a way to pick 15 sacks off their roster from guys who's going to step up. Is Malcolm Roche going to make an impact? Is he going to become the starter now? Is Brian Brissy, the draft pick they made, is he going to be able to have a massive impact his rookie season? Neither of those 2 guys are projected to be the top starters in the interior as of now, according to the depth chart that I'm seeing. So it's a lot of questions for a team that, let's be real, they should be the favorite to win this division, but they're not for too many reasons. And I think that's why a lot of people very fairly have doubts in this team.
Can I also just say one thing, too? Since 2009, the Saints have had now 7 defensive coordinators, yet Pete Carmichael is still the OC from 2009.
It
might be time for a change on the offense as well.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
It's starting to get a little bit stale.
Like Greg Williams was there from 09 to 2011, Bounty Gate. We loved it. Steve Spagnuolo, Rob Ryan, Dennis Allen was there for 5 seasons. Then moved to the head coaching role. They had 2 co-coordinators last year that were awful, and then they picked up Joe Woods off the Cleveland Browns scrap heap to be their DC.
Which is that's also the same Browns team that blew 2-3 touchdown lead last season to the Jets.
Listen. They could have hired Jeff Saturday. Could have done that too. If you want to blow leads.
I don't think a lot of people are going to hire Jeff Saturday anytime soon.
No, absolutely not. But you're right. You're right. This team should be the runaway favorite, but they're not because they are going to be held back by the outside factors of the coaching limitations that they currently have on them. Definitely the most talented team in the division, but the coaches will hold them back. It sounds familiar. Almost sounds like Brandon Staley is making his run in the AFC South, maybe too. I don't know.
I don't know about that. I think Brandon Staley's a little bit better than this Allen.
Week 18 will tell you differently.
Fair enough. All right, moving on. Next team in this division for us to talk about based off of how last season went, the Carolina Panthers. And, I mean, you just mentioned coaching, Rick. I know he hasn't coached a game in this division yet, but do the Panthers arguably have the best head coach in the division? Maybe. That's a question to bring up. Frank Reich was the new head coaching hire that the Carolina Panthers made. In an offseason full of change, Dave Tepper said, I want a better team, and I want it now, and I don't care what we have to spend to make that happen. You got to love it when billionaires are willing to spend money. It's a very entertaining thing to see, to say the very least. Along with the new hire of Frank Reich, the Carolina Panthers also made the investment of trading up to the first overall pick in this past draft, and getting the franchise talent of the future in this offseason to lead this franchise to grander things and above. I, of course, am talking about Andy Dalton. No, Bryce Young is QB1 for the long time foreseeable future for this franchise organization, and they tried to surround him with as much talent as they could with this team. They signed Miles Sanders, who's coming off a career year with the Philadelphia Eagles. They got Adam Thielen as a pickup in free agency after he was cut by the Minnesota Vikings as a cap relief saving, which Minnesota Vikings and cap relief cuts have been a key of this offseason if no one has paid enough attention. DJ Chark was a nice addition who had a decent year with the Detroit Lions, not the year he was maybe expecting, maybe with a young quarterback in Bryce Young, maybe that's more skilled to his better suited to his skill set. And you still have some interesting guys that we're waiting to see if they ever take a leap here in Laviska Shenault and Terrence Marshall Jr., 2 guys that very much so this team is hoping can make an impact on the squad. A decent offensive line with the likes of last year's first-round pick, Ekwono, a young guy in Brady Christensen. You have a decent interior there, and then you have Taylor Moton, the one-time left tackle, now looking to be on the right side here. It could be Ibrahim or Ekwono on each side. And then you have a defense, Justin mentioned it. This team was young defensively last year, and they dealt with injuries on the defense. Let's not forget that. One of the top guys on the defensive side for this team, Jeremy Chin, missed a significant amount of time last season, and they were still pretty good overall. Now this is a team that added Von Bell, that added Xavier Woods just to the safeties alone. You have Dante Jackson to be opposite of J.C. Horn. J.C. Horn, arguably one of the top young corners in the game, to say the very least. You have a defensive line led by the stalwarts of Derek Brown in the interior and the pass rush ability of Brian Burns, and a solid linebacker who I think a lot of people actually thought was going to be released in Shaq Thompson, but his consistency and his leadership is still there. Guys, this Carolina Panthers team is going to be a favorite pick amongst, I think, a lot of people to be a dark horse division winner. Justin, should people buy the hype of the I almost said Hurricanes, Carolina Panthers for the 2023 season? Hockey's on the brain. I apologize.
Listen, I can't blame you if you are. I mean, they have, in my opinion, set up the perfect atmosphere for a young quarterback to have with that coaching staff. They have a good offensive line. Their offensive line played really well. I expect Ike Ekwonu to take another step forward this year as he continued to improve last year. He was very good towards the end of the year. They have a great running game. They went out and they brought in good receivers. They have Josh McCown and Frank Reich and someone else that they brought in who they expect to be very, very integral in Bryce Young's development. And then, listen, I know they traded away their top receiver, but they went out and they got the best quarterback in the draft last year, and that is Bryce Young. So their issues last year were consistency on offense. It did not help that they had trouble consistently fielding a quarterback. I think they started 4 different quarterbacks last year, if I'm not mistaken. PJ Walker, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, and who was the fourth?
Sandoval was the fourth.
Sandoval was the fourth. Anyways, and look, they were a team of almosts last year. I mean, if they weren't robbed because the referees didn't know the rules in game one, all of a sudden they're 8-9 and they're tied at the end of the year with Tampa Bay. I mean, Tampa Bay might have had the tiebreaker, but look, they would have been a better team. Instead, they let Cleveland kick a field goal. They lose by 2 points in week one. And, then all of a sudden they're down. They're 1-5 by week 7. So, look, I think that they're a team that can start to get things going next season. They are going to benefit from having an easier schedule because they play not only their division, which is weak, but the NFC South, which is also a weak division. And they're going to have a rough start, but I could see them winning a lot of games down the stretch.
Right. And a big cat-based team that's going to have a tough start to the season schedule-wise, but it's looking a little bit softer and lighter at the end of it. That's in the South Division. Does that sound familiar to anyone? That just happened last year? I don't know. By the way, for the record, Justin, just for your sake, the fourth quarterback that threw passes last season, he went 1 for 3 on passes for 59 yards. Oh, no, excuse me. My bad. He went 3 for 5 on passes. 3 for 5 for 59 yards. Did he throw a touchdown? No, but he threw an interception. Jacob Eason.
So they started 3 quarterbacks, not 4.
Yeah,
the
fair
point
enough.
is they had some inconsistencies. They had some issues. They were jet-like in terms of quarterback play last year with better stats. So
Yeah. And also, to be fair, you mentioned that they were that Cleveland Browns kick away from being, potentially winning the division.
Yeah, I'm still mad about that for them. I mean, how do you not know the rules?
Well, I mean, NFL officiating and not knowing the rules is
it was also
very
Matt Rule was their head coach, so come on.
That too. But remember, they were also a Mike Evans 200-yard and 3 touchdown game away from winning that division as well.
You guys forget, though, I liked Matt Rule. I thought he was going to get fired, but not because I didn't like Matt Rule. I just thought that things weren't consistent enough in Carolina that he was going to end up being fired. Like I liked his style of coaching. I mean, he made a few mistakes here and there, but I liked for the most part his style of coaching. I liked the way his players played for him. They had a tough schedule at least one of those years, and they obviously didn't get done because the quarterback they traded for couldn't stay healthy. But I didn't dislike Matt Rule. I actually really liked him. I wanted the Jets to sign him over Adam Gase.
I think we all did.
But, well, certainly afterwards. But, yeah, I think that he was a victim of circumstance, and I believe a new owner coming in during his tenure didn't help.
No, I think Tepper was the guy that got him.
The first coach that Tepper hired?
I think so.
Tepper was there in 2018.
So
yeah, Tepper was the guy that gave him all that money.
Yeah,
but that's what I thought. I thought he was going to last longer just because I thought David Tepper wasn't going to be willing to burn the millions yet, but I guess he was.
No, I think that I had a feeling that he'd get impatient. Like I said, it's not that I don't think he deserved to be fired. He probably did. Excuse me, but I don't think he was a bad coach. I think he'll get another shot eventually after another stint in college.
Maybe to say the least. All right, Rick, your thoughts on the Carolina Panthers going into this 2023 season?
So you hitch your wagon to the star Bryce Young, and you have to kind of see where that takes you. Is he a supremely talented quarterback? Absolutely, but he's a rookie, and not only is he a rookie, I hate to bring in a past fandom here. He's an Alabama rookie,
of course,
who was drafted in the first round. And what don't you do? Draft kids from Alabama in the first round. I mean, it works for somebody. Look, yeah, he's going to have to grow up real quick, Bryce Young, because after the first 2 games of their season against Atlanta and New Orleans, at Seattle, home from Minnesota, at Detroit, at Miami. So if he survives that 6-game gauntlet as the quarterback, they could be okay. Because you're right, it is a softer schedule. My thing is still, they've got a lot of number 2 wide receivers on that team. Someone's got to be a number 1. They got a lot of number 2s. They don't have a true number 1 on their roster there. I think that they have added good pieces. Will the Brian Burns contract negotiations be a cloud over the head of this team going into this season? Is another question that I have. But I think they drafted very well. I think after Bryce Young, adding Jonathan Mingo, who they love in training camp, was an excellent pick in the second round. Guys that we were high on, Jerg, you and I, Chandler Zavala and Jimmy Robinson in the later rounds were good picks too. But again, it all sinks or swims with this first-round quarterback, with this number 1 overall pick. And, the history of, number 1 quarterbacks that, were drafted really well, that went to the playoffs in their rookie season, I don't think it's that high of a number. I mean, look, I was going to go into a fact this year where we're going to say, who was the last rookie quarterback to start a playoff game last year? And I was going to say, it was Connor Cook. But then I remembered Brock Purdy was the answer true. But again, Mr. Irrelevant 1 year, the number 1 pick the next year. We'll see. I mean, again, it's all about adjustments. And I think that the Carolina Panthers did a good job adding the right guys into the mold for him to, be a better player. Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard will be a great 1-2 combination in the backfield. Having Hayden Hurst, your tight end, is a strong asset there. And again, Ike Ekwonu was an excellent tackle for Carolina last year. But it all goes with that number 1 quarterback. And I'll be honest with you, I look at that four stretch, and then I look at November 19th when they're playing Dallas, and I'm a little concerned because, again, the way it shook out was they were second place technically in the division, right? So they get the second place teams that are the randoms, which is the Seattle, the Miami, the Dallas. So the schedule is not kind to them in the earlier spot of the season. And again, maybe December 31st, Jacksonville's fighting for a playoff spot, so they'll be gutting hard like crazy too. So a lot of variables in their schedule. But again, could Bryce Young throw 3,500 yards? Absolutely.
Good.
But could he also throw 15 interceptions?
Nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Big
But
question.
could he total 30-plus touchdowns between the air and the ground? Also a possibility.
Well, yes, or hand the ball to Miles Sanders, let him do his thing.
Yeah. But again, this is the interesting thing. Frank Reich is going to be I think the interesting thing to me ultimately will be Frank Reich getting to work with a quarterback that can actually move and not look like a crippled old man in the backfield. Because good Lord, the last couple of quarterbacks that Frank Reich has had to work with, he has not had a quarterback like this to work with in recent years in his career. He just hasn't. It's been Matt Ryan. It's been the end of Carson Wentz. It's been Jacoby Brissett. It's been. I mean, he got to work a little bit with Andrew Luck, but Andrew Luck wasn't necessarily a speed demon when it came to running, to say the very least. So
Andrew Luck was a truck, man.
This is the most athletic quarterback that Frank Reich has had to work with. I think he might have a little bit of fun with this. I'll thoroughly admit I'm pretty high on this Carolina Panthers team. I think there's a lot of young, youthful energy on the squad. And Rick, at the end of the day, I firmly believe in this philosophy. Iron sharpens iron, and you cut your teeth in the early part of the season against some of these teams. Maybe you get the one big upset win over one of these squads early on, and then you see what happens. Like that very much could be the case. All it takes is that one win, and this young Carolina Panthers team is going to take their confidence and just roll with it. And again, Justin said it already. This was a good defense going into last season that had some injuries. If this team is able to be healthy this time, if Jeremy Chin can be there for the full 17-game stretch, if J.C. Horn can look like the number 1 corner that they hope he can, I think that's a good thing. And unlike the other teams that I mentioned, this is not a what if of can these old guys step up. This is a what if of are we going to see the full potential of the young players, which I think is a fair question to wonder than it is the old guys just in terms of what's going to succeed. I have more faith in a young player breaking out more than I do a potentially over-the-hill veteran having one more good season.
So you're telling me you think that Carolina can beat your boy Geno Smith?
Oh no, I didn't say he'd beat. I didn't say they'd beat Geno.
I'm just making sure we.
But listen. You're talking about a Miami Dolphins team that had to hire the old man, Western Vic Fangio, because they were a bad defense last year. And how long is it going to take there? A Dallas Cowboys team that at times the defense wasn't necessarily looking at its best. They lost a couple. That defense lost them a couple games last season, just as much as Dak did. And we need to see if Dak is going to be able to properly be rebounded this year at that point. Like there are some, and again, it's Mike McCarthy calling the plays. That is a prime upset pick that week for Mike McCarthy calling plays against young talent.
I just wanted to make sure that you weren't going against your Ring of Honor candidate over there.
No.
If you said it was Minnesota, I'd be more inclined to believe you. But
also, yeah, they're frauds on that schedule.
Obviously, they're fraud.
So at the end of the day, the Carolina Panthers have the potential to do this, and like Justin said, there's a reason to be high on them.
Speaking of fraudulence.
Yes.
How about Todd Bowles?
The number 1 team in that division, last season's NFC South champions, who just recently, I believe it was their number 1 corner. Who was it? Davis? I think Carlton Davis.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I just had to make sure he was the quarter that said it. Carlton Davis said that a lot of people are sleeping on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and that they are doubting them, and that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will prove a lot of people wrong. And they might prove people wrong because instead of being a 6-win team, they might only be a 4-win team. So that counts as proving us wrong if we're being technical. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the final team here in the NFC South that we're going to be going over. And no longer are they the Tampa Bay Cube Gronkaneers. They are just the good old-fashioned, I don't know about good, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, to say the very least. Gone is the franchise-altering quarterback of the last 2+ decades, that is Tom Brady. Gone is the greatest tight end of his generation until Travis Kelce showed up in Rob Gronkowski. Gone is AQ Shipley. Actually, no, he might still be on the coaching staff. Gone is the allure of that team that won the Super Bowl in the first season that Brady and Gronk made things happen in Tampa. Now is a team that is quarterbacked by, drumroll please, Baker Mayfield. Yeah, so if we look at it, you have Baker Mayfield at quarterback, Rachaad White at running back, who I actually hope has a pretty good season. You got some veteran wide receivers there, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, as well as Russell Gage being a nice third option there, and a pretty solid enough offensive line that did need to see a little bit of of turnover on the roster. A couple of their guys from the year before, mainly on that right side of the line, no longer there. They had to cut Donovan Smith for cap reasons, and they traded Shaq Mason away to the Texans, who Shaq Mason, a good guard, just always gets traded for mid to late round picks. It's really weird. But they still have Ryan Jensen on the roster. They drafted Cody Mock, someone that the three of us, I think the NFL community as a whole, was becoming very high on as the draft approached there. But on the left side is probably their most consistency. You got Tristan Wirfs there as well as Matt Filer. So they're gonna hope that left side could keep Baker upright, and he underthrows his receivers by 5 to 10 yards on any given play potentially. But then the defensive side of things, this is where it could be. The defense is where they got to hope that they just overperform, because you have some veterans there in Vita Vea, in Levante David, in Shaq Barrett. You still have the young guy in Devin White, which they're still somehow hoping that they could repair things in order to keep him long term. Although I'm not sure. They have the young guy who they drafted for pass rush help in Kalijah Cansey, who the three of us were very high on going into the draft. And then you have a defensive backfield who, like I mentioned, on one side you have Ryan Neal and Jamal Dean, who are solid, fine starters, but not at the top of it. But then on the other side, you got free safety Antoine Winfield Jr. and like I said before, Carlton Davis III. So it is an enigma of a team, to say the very least, but I think there is the complete roster turnover of that team is going to be its downfall, and plus the fact that, as Rick mentioned, Todd Bowles is the head coach, and Todd Bowles as a head coach has not necessarily been a 100% hit rate in this league in his career. Rick, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, how do they win this division if they can?
Look, I like Todd Bowles. Wait, let me explain. Much in the way that Justin likes Matt Rule, I like Todd Bowles, in that if I was in the middle of a terrible conversation at a party and I need somebody to get me out of it, I'd say, have you met Todd? He's my good friend. And I have Todd Bowles just talk to the guy. And I just sneak my way out of the conversation. It's like that. He's boring. This Tampa Bay team is boring. I'm sorry. They just are. You go from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield or John Wolford, because he's the backup. There's a lot of the guys that you named, Jerg, Rachaad White, Mike Evans, Vita Vea, Devin White, all probably going to be trade deadline candidates for this team, because I do not see this Tampa Bay team doing anything worth anything in general. I think this is going to be a real just shut down the lights on this team this year. There are some good pieces to the squad that you hope do well, but there's no I would say there's no way that I could foresee them being what they were. And it doesn't suck because Tampa was a Super Bowl contender a couple years ago and a Super Bowl winner a couple years ago, sure. But again, when you hitch your wagon to that Tom Brady and then he leaves and the cupboard behind it is bare, well, because again, it wasn't even Gronk. Cameron Brate's not on this team anymore. So they have no good tight end. I don't care Kate Otten or Ko Kieft. Ko Kieft is what you have at home. If you want to get Gronk, when you have it at home, that's Ko Kieft. Look, they're not going to be a good team.
Ko Kieft sounds like some sort of window cleaning solution.
Yeah, right. Or a varnish for cabinetry or something like that. Yeah, it's just look, they're just not going to be a good team this year. I think we just all have to accept that fact. Are there pieces that could be fine? Sure, but again, you have Baker Mayfield as a starting quarterback, man. Like, it doesn't do you any good to have that guy as your starting QB after how well he played in Carolina. I mean, he could be the first guy ever to cost 2 head coaches their jobs mid-season in back-to-back years. So, I think that's pretty good. But yeah, I mean, it's not looking good for Tampa Bay. And I think the real, like I said, the real pieces to all this is that those guys that I mentioned are all going to be absolute trade deadline candidates. This Tampa team, if they're as bad as I think they're going to be, they are going to be a shell of who they are come their bye week and come mid-season, because they're just not a good team.
Yeah, perhaps maybe the team that's going to be the biggest fire seller in this division come the trade deadline, because there are a lot of pieces that could be, well, not just could be, will be perceived as valuable. And it's not just the defensive side. I think you did mention him, but Chris Godwin is going to be someone that I think is going to be highly coveted, because is his future really long for Tampa Bay if there's going to be no more winning done there? Justin brought up the interesting point earlier in this offseason. It would, if Tampa Bay goes to Mike Evans and say, hey, we want to do right by you here in the last stages of your career. Do you want to go to a better team? Do you want to go to a contending team? Do you want to go to a team that will keep that 1,000-yard streak alive? Which, that is my big thing for Tampa Bay. You better not screw up Mike Evans' streak of 1,000-yard seasons to start his career, goddammit.
They'll find a way.
Keep that at least.
They'll find a way.
Don't be the Philadelphia Flyers and then Keith Yandel's Iron Man streak.
He'll be open on the last play of the season from 6 yards out, needing 4 yards for 1,000, and Baker will try and go with the Trey Palmer in traffic.
Is Trey Palmer on this team?
Yeah, he got drafted to this team this year, yeah.
Ah, okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, Justin, us lamenting on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' future aside, what do you think about this team in 2023?
I don't necessarily believe in the coach. I was a Todd Bowles apologist for a long time, and he really opened my eyes last year. He was not good as a coach there. I mean, anyone that's going to turn around and overtime and say, hey, we didn't really trust Tom Brady to move the ball down the field. Like, what kind of all right. Either way, they are devoid of talent in some key spaces. Their offensive line was rough last year due to injury, but it's possible they get it back on track this year. I don't love their quarterbacks. You got to hope their defense is good, but I've been saying that their secondary has not been great for years now. And it's not like they've done anything to address any of those concerns. They must not be listening to our podcast. So I don't know what to tell you. I don't expect a lot from this Tampa Bay team this year. And in fact, I think there's a good shot they're 0-4 going into their bye week in week 5, and a lot of teams have them in trouble.
That sounds about right. Just this, like, of all the teams we've talked about in this division, we have our concerns about the Saints, but we can point to their talent, right? We have our concerns about the Atlanta Falcons, but again, similar things: skill position group, consistency along the offensive line. Their defensive upgrades either did good enough last season or have the upside. Carolina Panthers are the team full of upside that have, again, I still say this, I think the Panthers might arguably have the best coach in the division with Frank Reich, and just the scheme that they could run, the defense that was projected. Like, I think we can point to each of the other 3 teams and say, but they could win the division if X, Y, and Z happens. Tampa, you got to go through the entire goddamn alphabet from A to Z. From the A to Z mystery series, you got to go from A to Z to figure out how could this team somehow win this division. I think this is the one team in this division that I just don't think, like you talked about the epitome of the Falcons, Rick, of they could be, or was it the Saints that you said they could be 6-0 or 2-4 by week 7?
Yeah.
I was shocked if this team is above 500, 6, 7, 8 games into the year.
I will say the one thing that they have going for them is I didn't see what Seattle was doing last year either, and they turned it around. They were a good team.
Well, Geno Smith's not on this team.
Duh.
That must be it. But no, they have like a lot of the same kind of bare bones. It seemed like that Seattle did. They have a good defensive line when it's healthy. They have good receivers. Their offensive line has been okay. They've got a decent running game, although they did cut their running back. I don't see what they're doing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be the worst team in the league next year. As I had Seattle pegged for the number 1 pick last year, and obviously I was wrong. So you got to get a shout out. You never know, but I don't see it. They also don't have the coach that Pete Carroll is. Yeah,
to say the very least. Geno Smith ain't walking through that door. Pete Carroll walking through that door to save the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Bruce Arians might be walking into a door, but he might be firing Todd Bowles as he does.
Yeah, as he should.
That could very much be the case. Again, this is a team that ruined Byron Leftwich's head coaching prospects, and he has to rebuild his career now in order to get this opportunity again in 2 or 3 years. Just bad stuff, to say the very least, out of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Bad.
Well, that completes as we go through each team individually. Now, to end off the divisional breakdown with the NFC South this week, we're going to make our predictions on who we think will be, excuse me, the sound was on who is going to be our division winner in this division, but also our full division, so from 4 to 1. So what we're going to do here, guys, we're going to go around. We're each going to say our 4. We're each going to say our 3. And then we're going to say who our division winner will be, actually, just to make it more unique. So who wants to start off? Who wants to start with their 4th in this division? Or are we just going to resoundingly say Tampa Bay? Someone, anyone, speak.
So, yeah, I also did records too, and I adjusted mine per our conversation. I have Tampa Bay at 5-12, last place in this division.
Okay.
Last place, I have. Let me just go over my sheets again. Tampa Bay.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as my 4th seed in the division. Rick, who is your 3rd seed in the NFC South?
At 6-11, Carolina.
Okay. Rick is not buying the hype train of the Carolina Panthers. Justin, who do you have as your 3rd in this division?
I have the Falcons as 3rd.
Me and Justin are going to be doubling up. I have the Atlanta Falcons as my 3rd team in this division as well. Rick, your number 1 seed in the NFC South, so basically the NFC South division winner for the 2023 season, will be
at 9-8, winning their Week 18 finale to get into the playoffs, the Atlanta Falcons.
Ooh. Okay, so
beating the New Orleans Saints, who will finish 8-9.
Nice.
Very disappointing first year for Derek Carr. Dennis Allen gets fired.
I could get behind that. All right, so Rick is going with the Dirty Birds to dance their way into the postseason for the first time. No, they made it
forever.
They made it the year after they collapsed in the Super Bowl, I'm pretty sure. But then
I think so.
Been a minute since then. All right, so Rick has the Atlanta Falcons as his NFC South division winner. Justin, who do you have winning this division?
With a late season surge, I'm going to pick the rookie. I'm going to say Carolina wins a lot of that easy back half of their schedule, and they will surge up and they will win the division by a hair. I'm gonna give it a tiebreaker. I'm gonna say they probably have the same record or similar record to the Saints, and they'll win it with a tiebreaker.
Or what would be even funnier, if the Saints go 8-9, but the Panthers go 8-1, and that tie gets them into the postseason.
I don't bet on ties anymore.
Really?
I don't want to do
revisionist history.
it anymore. All right.
Well, me and Justin, we're on the same wavelength in this episode because I got the Saints at 2, and I got the Carolina Panthers as my 2023 NFC South Division winner. Put me all in with the rookie to make things happen for this team. I firmly believe that the infusion of young talent, the belief, the attitude, the personality of this team, Frank Reich as the coach, their most talented young quarterback he's worked with in his career, at least recently. I'm easily going. I'm going with the Carolina Panthers here, but I'm with Justin. I think it's going to be very close. I think it's good. Like, it could be a case where they're tied, and it comes down to, like, it's not going to be the first tiebreaker. It's going to be they have the same division record, they have the same conference record, they have the same AFC record. It's going to go to like the 7th or 8th division tiebreaker, whatever it has to be.
Wait, Rick, you have Arthur Smith surviving the year?
Yeah, I do.
I so Rick going fully against Justin in this one.
I believe in people.
I believe in people too.
Yeah, just not the same type of
person.
Sure you do.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that just about wraps it up. So just a quick reminder for the people. Our NFC South predictions go as follows. For the Podfather himself, he is going to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 4th place, the Carolina Panthers in 3rd, the New Orleans Saints in 2nd place, and the Atlanta Falcons will be his division winner. For me and Justin, it is the same list. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be our 4th team. The Atlanta Falcons will be our 3rd team. The New Orleans Saints will be 2nd, and the Carolina Panthers, with the first overall pick from this past draft class, will be going all the way, baby, to the playoffs. Will they win a playoff game? Probably not, but, we can hope for an entertaining game, to the very least. All right, that does it for the first week of the Sports Agents of Chaos NFL division breakdowns. That was a beautiful first division. And I think the NFC South really got our juices going here. And I think we're going to be into it for the next 7 weeks of fun stuff. But before we leave, ladies and gentlemen, if you are new to the program, first off, welcome. plenty of football talk. If you just joined last week and actually returned, yes, we actually do talk football on this podcast, contrary to popular belief. But we end things off in a different way because, as I've said, the slogan of the show: fun, football, chaos. We start with the fun. Justin's trivia this week: banger. Football, divisional breakdowns, banger. Chaos. Maybe a little bit of chaos to some people with who me and Justin pick winning. Maybe all three of us pick and win this division. None of us pick the Saints. It's time for the real way we end this goddamn show every week. Rantin, Rick's Rostrum Podium. Ladies and gentlemen, the Rant Master, the Podfather, is here. Rick, show him how it's done.
I'm tired today. I really am. I'm tired of a lot of things. And I'm tired of a lot of people. And like Frank Costanza says, now you're going to hear about my problems with you people. Number 3 on this list, I want to talk about Wimbledon, the wonderful tennis tournament that's currently going on right now over in England. Did you happen to see the round 3 match yesterday? It was 2 unseeded women's tennis players, one from Ukraine, one from Romania. They went almost 4 hours in a third round match. And the third set tiebreak went 20-18. So normally when you see a match like that, you think to yourself, oh, good. Okay, this must have been a really good match. Let's check the stats and see. They only won between the two of them 55 total points. The other 134 were on mistakes, unforced errors, and double faults. The 3 of us here can play better tennis than the 2 of them can.
I think we might be going a stretch too far.
We can at least keep the ball in the court, maybe. It's a big court.
Maybe if it's the 3 of us against one of them all at once,
that was what I was saying. Yeah, we could do that. Like, I don't know about you, but I take my breakfast at Wimbledon without terrible tennis. So I think it was the Ukrainian Serenko who won. Enjoy being destroyed in the 4th round by Jessica Pegula of the United States. USA, etc. from there. Number 2, Georgia. The state of Georgia. More like the University of Georgia. Georgia football program specifically. So Wednesday morning, a Georgia linebacker was cited for speeding, going 88 miles an hour in a 55 mile an hour zone, which is about 2/3 of the way to a Hollywood Brown, which is 146 and a 55, obviously. But this is more my conversation about this whole thing. Since 2021, Georgia football players have been involved in 60 speeding violations, speeding, distracted, reckless driving, disobeying traffic signs. About 30 of them happened last summer when your head coach, Kirby Smart, met with the police to talk about dangerous speed racing. So what was he doing? Just going out to Wawa and getting himself a soda or something like that? Like, we have a pervasive problem in this country with reckless driving and youths speeding. And I think Kirby Smart, the Philadelphia Eagles' next great scout, is an enabler. And I'm going to call you out for it. Stop enabling these kids, Kirby Smart. Teach them how to drive. Hands of 10 and 2, be their damn driving instructor instead of allowing these kids who are on NIL deals, buying Teslas and Rolls Royces and Land Rovers to drive however they want to in the backwoods of Georgia. It's not good for your state. It's not good for your program. And ultimately, it will get you fired. Very simple. Speaking of somebody who should be fired, my number 1, Brooks Koepka. You are a grade A D-bag, Brooks Koepka. And people who know golf know that Brooks Koepka is just the most annoying person to golf with ever. He's on the LIV Golf Tour. And one of his teammates, hasn't really been playing well. It's well documented that Matthew Wolff has a history of mental issues and yips and all of that. Brooks Koepka, being the ever popular guy that he is, was quoted in an interview saying, it's not right when you quit on your team like that. Do you know what mental health issues are, Brooksy? Do you know what they are? I don't think you do. You have too much in your head of other things to know that when a guy is struggling and has mental health issues, it's not quitting. It's the guy literally can't take it anymore. So maybe instead of putting so much pressure on the guy, your own countryman, by the way, maybe just let out a helping hand. And until you do that, this is my new tagline for you, Brooks Koepka. I'm going to go to the beach and make a sandcastle with your ashes. That's how it is. That's how it is. Be better. Be nicer. Don't be like me. But be like me in hating Kyrgyzstan. And Duncan. Because they suck too.
What about your best friend? What about your Bears fan?
Adam gets a pass this week.
Yeah, fair enough.
Adam gets a pass this week because, I haven't heard anything from him lately, so, he's fine.
There we go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Rick clearly plans out what to do with the future of Brooks Koepka's career and life, apparently as a whole, thank you so much for joining us on this week's edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Like it says in the title, like I've said throughout the show, and like I've said even in previous weeks before this, first week done, 7 weeks in a row, we're going to go division by division, and we're going to break down the division like we did today, all around discussion on the team. What do we like? What do we not like from the offseason? And then we're going to save our predictions at the end, which will all culminate in our playoff predictions. Guys, this is obviously it's tough getting to the football season. We know it is, but low-key, sometimes leading up to it is the most favorite time of the year, where we just get to talk about it, where all the potential is, where all the hope is, and we get to either lift teams up or dash their hopes at this point of the year. And we'll be right, we'll be wrong, we'll be somewhere in between. We won't know until the end of 2023. But join us there on the journey as we continue this podcast on a week-by-week basis. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the pod. SAOC on YouTube, on our own YouTube channel. It's a glorious thing to be able to see that. And keep joining us here on a consistent weekend basis going forward. Saturdays for the most part, barring Sunday scheduling. Thank you once again from myself, from Justin, and from the Podfather. We will see you guys next